Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This is my third anticipated reads video that I've done for this year. So this is going to be the books that are coming out July, August, and September. Starting on July 2nd, we have a romance book that I thought might be fun. It's called The Love of My Afterlife by Christy Greenwood. And this is basically a book about a woman who dies because she choked on a microwavable hamburger, and she goes to heaven where she meets the love of her life. And then all of a sudden the angels are like, oops, we made a mistake. He wasn't supposed to die. So they send the guy back to Earth, and she's like, oh man, I just found this guy. I thought I could finally find love in the hereafter, and now he's gone. So they end up giving her a deal where they'll let her go back to Earth for like a certain amount of time so that she can try and find this man and see if he really is the love of her life. So I don't know, it sounds like it could be cute. Hopefully it's not too like cheesy, but we'll see. And then also coming out July 2nd, we have a YA horror novel called Midnight Rooms, and this is by Danye Coles. I hope I'm saying her first name correctly. So this is about a woman who's half white, half black, and so she's an orphan, and she doesn't really feel like she fits in anywhere. And so she meets this man who shows up at her uncle's parlor. Oh, I guess I should preface this by saying this is a historical novel, so it's in 1840s Victorian England. So this man shows up at her uncle's house and says that he wants her hand in marriage. And so she kind of jumps at the chance because I don't know if maybe she doesn't have a good home life or she just doesn't feel comfortable there, but she just thinks that this is a golden opportunity for her to feel like she's going to a place where she belongs. And she does actually have feelings for him. So this gives off Crimson Peak vibes, and I really love that movie a lot. And I've read the novelization, which is just as good. So that's what I'm hoping to get from this. It sounds like a lot of supernatural, creepy stuff is going to happen. And it sounds like she gets drugged at one point, and then she wakes up and she's got bruises all over her, and she doesn't know what happened. And there's locked doors, and the servants all seem kind of scared and skittish. And I don't know, it just sounds like a blast, and I'm very excited for this one. Then coming out July 9th, we have a thriller called The Unraveling by V. Keeland, or maybe it's by, I'm not sure. So this one is about a woman who is having an ethical dilemma because she's a therapist, but she has something tragic happen in her life, and she discovers that this man also had the same tragedy happen in his life, and for some reason this makes her turn into a bit of a stalker, and she's been watching him and following him, and she's become obsessed with him. But then one day he walks into her business seeking a psychiatrist, and she doesn't want to tell him that she can't ethically, you know, be his therapist because she's obsessed with him. So it sounds like it's going to be a wild, wacky time. Then coming out July 16th, we have another thriller called The Astrology House by Karen Jade. And this is a locked room mystery. And there's this woman who's been trying to get pregnant, but she can't. And she convinces her brother and her friend to come with her to this astrology house, which is supposed to be like a relaxation retreat at this old Victorian house where you just go to relax, and they tell you your astrology stuff every night, and a place to just get away from the world and get away from it all. But of course, as always in these types of books, they've all got secrets, and the person that's hosting the astrology house perhaps has the biggest secret of all. Then we have 4 books coming out July 23rd. The first one is a manga by the master of horror manga, Junji Ito. It's called Ally, and that's all I know about that. That's all I want to know about it. I just like to go in blind because manga is so short anyways. So then there's The Drowning House by Sherry Priest, and this is about a mysterious house that just washes up on the beach one day, and apparently a woman there with her son, she realizes what this house means because it's a portend of evil to come or something. So I read the synopsis, and honestly it sounds really weird and strange, so I don't even really know anything else about this except for that there's this mysterious house that just washes up on the beach, and it's supposedly bringing some sort of evil to the town. So I just want to see what this is all about, and I just recognize the author name, so that's basically why I'm interested in it. And then we have No Road Home by John Fram. And this sounds like it's going to be a bit of a cult book. So there's this single father that's been taking care of his son, and when his son's old enough, he falls in love with this girl, and she's like a really religious person, and her dad's like a televangelist or something, and so they end up getting married and moving to this compound, and then the dad's able to go with them because he's part of the family now. But then a storm arises and they're stuck in this compound. The roads are not safe to drive on, and the old priest ends up getting murdered, but they find him stabbed on top of the roof of his mansion. So that's a little bit weird. And there's a spectral figure that they see that's dressed in a black suit. So sounds like it could be promising. And then there's quite a few new releases coming out July 30th. The first one is a YA romance by Rainbow Rowell. This is the same author of Fangirl. And this is a trope where they were kids together and everybody thought that they should get together, but they're like, nah, we're just friends, we're only ever going to be friends. And so when they get older, she goes off to college and he joins the Navy, and they don't see each other for a while. But now she's 33 and their paths cross once more, and love is in the air. And then we have another YA book coming out, but this one's a horror, and it's called Our Wicked Histories by Amy Goldsmith. This is the same author that did Those We Drown. And this sounds like it's going to be about a girl who got suspended from her art school, and she was a scholarship student, and so she really needs to get that scholarship back if she wants to continue to go there. And she gets an invitation to go to this manor with these twins who are part of this rich elite school, and she's hoping if she can get in good with them, then she can weasel her way back into the school. But when she gets there, it's not the idyllic place that she thought it was going to be. It's like damp and drafty, and apparently there's local legends of something living in the pond that's on the property, and so she's trying to figure out the mystery surrounding that. So I love the cover for this one. I think it sounds and looks amazing. Then we have The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And this is part of a series. This is the last one that's going to be coming out. This is part of the Inheritance Games series. But this one doesn't really sound like it's too connected as far as plot lines. It just has the same characters. So Avery and the four Hawthorne brothers have started a new game on this island where they have 7 people come to compete in this competition in order to receive riches and fame. So sounds like it could be a fun time. I really like the cover for this one as well. Then we have a middle grade horror coming out called It Came from the Trees by Allie Russell. This sounds like it's going to be a Bigfoot story, so that's interesting. You don't really hear very many Bigfoot stories. Her and her friend are part of a scout group, and they're out in the wilderness on this reservation, and her friend gets taken by Bigfoot, and of course nobody believes her, especially the police. And her dad is the first Black Park Ranger on this reservation, and so she's trying to recruit his help to go find her friend out in the wilderness. Then we have Look in the Mirror by Catherine Steadman. I mostly want to read this because it's by Catherine Steadman, and I really enjoyed The Family Game. So this is a thriller about 2 women, and they don't seem connected, but obviously they have to be connected somehow. But when you read the synopsis, they don't sound connected. So this is about a woman who inherits this fancy house that's all glass and marble and something that rich people would live in, and she's wondering how her dad could have possibly afforded to have this vacation home that she knew nothing about. But now that he's passed away, she's inherited this house. And then we have another woman named Maria, and she's a nanny, and she's going to do one more gig for some rich people, watch over their kids for the summer. But when she shows up at their big fancy mansion, nobody's there. There's no kids. And so she's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna hang out here. I don't know why you would do that. It seems a little bit strange to me, but she decides that, if she's not gonna get paid, then she's just gonna hang out for a while and swim in the pool and go to the spa and just stay at this mansion. But there was one rule for her staying there when the kids were going to be there, and that was stay out of the basement. So we know she's going to look in the basement. And then we have a slasher coming out called Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. And this is a summer camp slasher, but it has to do with adults instead of teenagers. So this is about a woman who has been part of a sitcom for years, but she gets in a bit of trouble because she sends bad tweets on social media that pisses people off, and then she gets blind drunk and like runs headlong into a pool. And so the producers of the show are nervous about all this bad publicity, so they send her to this camp for adults and other actresses and writers and different things who kind of just need to separate themselves from society for a bit, find their way, kind of recenter themselves. And so she's like, all right, whatever. So she goes and she's like, oh, maybe I'll even have like a summer fling or something. But then somebody ends up dead, and it sounds like people are getting their heads chopped off. So hence the title, hence will roll, but she's trying to make it out alive. So it sounds like it should be a good, campy, fun time. And then we have a gothic romance coming out called Castle of the Cursed by Romina Garber, and it sounds like it's going to be set in Spain, which is exciting. So this woman, she was part of an attack that killed her parents, and so now she's got survivor's guilt, and she wants to know why this happened to her, and she goes to live with her aunt in Spain at this Spanish castle, and she meets this boy in the castle that has silver eyes and claims that he's been trapped in the house and can't get out. So it sounds like there might be a romance between her and what I'm assuming is a ghost of some sort or some kind of entity, but I love gothic stories, and so I'm really excited for this one. Then we have 3 books coming out August 6th. The first one is Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson, and I am a huge fan of her. I love the Truly Devious series and the Name of the Stars series. This is a YA novel about a girl who gets a job on this island working as a tour guide on this island at this house that was built in the 1920s. And so she thinks it's just going to be this boring summer job, but then she finds out that the house has some deaths associated with it. And then this is also has some sapphic romance in it, so just be aware of that. And then we have Nightmare in the Backyard by Jeff Strand. This is a middle grade book about a group of girls who have a camp out in the backyard, and they think it's going to be all fun ghost stories and s'mores and telling secrets and all the fun, but then Elijah, the boy next door, keeps pulling pranks on them. But they just find it annoying, but they're not like super upset about it. But then they keep hearing scratches on the side of their tent, but then when they go outside, there's nobody there. And so they're thinking that maybe it's not Elijah that's doing these pranks. And then we have Eye of the Beholder by Emma Branford. This is a thriller, and it sounds like it's going to be based on Vertigo by Alfred Hitchcock, so that's pretty exciting. So this is about a woman who receives a ghostwriting job to write the memoir for this famous cosmetic surgeon. And so she travels to the Scottish Highlands to do that. But then mysterious things start to happen while she's staying there. Objects go missing. There's handprints on the windows. She sees a mysterious figure, different things like that. So it sounds like it should be a fun time. So coming out August 13th, we have is Hemlock House, which is actually a sequel to Liar's Beach. And I was drawn to this one by the cover, I'll admit, and I didn't realize it was a sequel. So I went ahead and bought the first book. I haven't read it yet, but I'm planning to read it before the second one comes out. So this is a YA murder mystery type series. And in the second one, it sounds like one of the main characters from the first book, he's trying to get back together with his ex-girlfriend, but somebody at her dorm room gets murdered, and so they're trying to help solve the murder. But it soon becomes apparent that perhaps this was a case of mistaken identity, and that his ex-girlfriend herself might have been the intended victim, because the girl who had been murdered was wearing her clothes and was sleeping in her bed at the time. Sounds interesting and intriguing, and I'm excited to read it. And then we have Through the Midnight Door by Katrina Monroe. And this one sounds like a weird one. It's about 3 sisters who stumble upon this old abandoned house, and they find 3 keys that goes to this house. And when you go inside, apparently there's like a corridor in this house where there's just an endless line of doors. And so they all pick a door and they go inside, and some kind of unspeakable horror happens. And then years later, one of the sisters is found dead in the house of an apparent suicide. So now the sisters are trying to deal with the death of their sister and trying to figure out what happened to her and probably come to terms with what happened to them in their childhood all those years ago. And then we have I Need You to Read This by Jessa Maxwell. And this is the same author who wrote The Golden Spoon. I know this one didn't get a whole lot of praise or very good reviews. I personally liked it. I'll admit it doesn't really work as like a thriller or a murder mystery because the murder doesn't even happen until towards the end, and it's not really a big part of the story, to be honest. But I thought the story itself was interesting. I liked the baking show aspect and I liked the characters, and I just had a fun time with it despite it not being the best murder mystery I've read. So I was excited to read something else by this author. Sometimes it's interesting because debut novels are very interesting because either the debut is the worst of the authors and they're just trying to find their writing rhythm, or they get better with practice as they go along and their next novels are better, or sometimes they have like one hit wonders where the debut was their best work and then it's all downhill from there. So you never know which way it's going to go. So I just want to read something else by this author and see if she's truly for me or not. And this is about a woman who does copywriting jobs for a living, and she has a hero that does an advice column, and she ends up murdered, and she's very sad about it, but then she realizes that her job is now open, and so she's like, it's a long shot, but I'm just gonna apply for it and see what happens. And she actually gets the job, and she's very excited, and she ends up being very good at doing advice columns. But then she starts receiving threatening messages, and she's afraid that she's going to meet the same fate as her hero who had just passed away. Next, coming out August 15th, we have The Island by Sarah Goodwin. And this one seems like it's going to be very summery. And this is about a couple of women who get these golden tickets to go to this music festival on this Greek island. They're very excited to be there amongst the influencers and musicians and celebrities. But when they get to the island, they realize that they're not as close as they thought. They're a little bit more removed. They're not right up in the action like they wanted to be. So they were pretty disappointed, but they're like, we can still hear the music from where we're at. We're still kind of close. We still get to do a few things with them. Let's just make the most of this trip. But then the third day that they're there, something goes down that they did not expect, and they get trapped on this island, as always happens in these type of books. And then coming out August 20th, we have The Third Wife of Faraday House by B.R. Myers. And this one sounds like it's going to be like a Jane Eyre, Rebecca type story. So this is about a woman who, her guardian is setting up all of these suitors for her hand, but she doesn't like any of them. She thinks they're odious and weird and terrible, and she doesn't like them. And she's like, I really like this lieutenant that's part of the British Navy, and I would like for him to propose. And so she goes about trying to woo this man, but then all of a sudden something goes down and scandal happens, and so he's no longer a prospect for her. And all the other suitors have been like, well, we don't want to be part of this scandal, see ya, and they all leave. So now she has no prospects and nobody wants to marry her except for this one man. And so she's like, well, I guess this is my only chance to take part in society and get married and not be a burden to my guardian anymore. So I guess I'm going to marry this guy. And as always happens in these stories based on Jane Eyre, he's already had 2 other wives before her, and it was kind of weird circumstances surrounding their deaths or disappearances. But she's not too concerned about it until she shows up at his house after they get married, and da-da-da-da, his second wife is still alive, not dead yet. Apparently she is ailing and they expect her to die any moment, but something's going down that she's thinking is nefarious. Then coming out August 27th, we have The Madness by Dawn Kurtagich. So mostly this author writes YA novels, but it looks like this one might be an adult one. So that'll be interesting. So this is a homage to Dracula. This is about Mina Murray and Lucy Westenra. And Mina is a psychiatrist, and she notices that her friend Lucy is having all these symptoms to this illness that one of her patients is also struggling with, even though he's like hundreds of miles away from where she is. And so she thinks this is weird, and they try to discover the mysterious happenings. And it sounds like this is going to be more of like a feminist book surrounding Dracula, because it sounds like a group of women are going to get together and try to take down the monster. So, sounds like a fun time. And can I just say, I love covers like this that have houses on it. I'm such a sucker for that. Beautiful, gorgeous cover. Speaking of gorgeous covers and vampires, we also have So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. I absolutely love Rachel Harrison. I wasn't a huge fan of her last novel, Black Sheep, but I've loved everything else that I've read by her. So I'm very excited for this one. So this sounds like it's about a woman who receives a birthday present from her husband to go on this weekend getaway, not with him, but with her best friend, to just get away from it all. And she is excited by this because she just wants to forget about her life for a little bit, because apparently her husband has been unfaithful to her, and she hates the fact that she's getting older, and she just wants to have fun with her friend. Well, her friend, trying to aid her in forgetting, takes her on this wild night with these strangers, and something goes down with eternal consequences. I bet you can guess what that means, but it sounds like it's going to be a fun time. And that one's coming out September 10th. And then also coming out September 10th, we have Sleep Tight by J.H. Merkert. And this one I'm a little bit hesitant on because I just read Mr. Lullaby, and I wasn't a big fan of that story. It was okay, it had good moments, but by and large, it wasn't really my thing. And then it literally had like no ending. So I'm a little bit hesitant on this one, but it sounds really good. So I am hopeful that this one will work better for me. It's about this man that calls himself Father Silence, and he's a priest. And it's one of these situations where he's kind of like H.H. Holmes, and the police discover his house of nightmares, and they carry out 19 bodies. But there's one boy that survives, but he has to go to a hospital for the criminally insane. And so this Father Silence is put on death row and is finally carried out like 20 years later. But the day his execution takes place, the arresting officer ends up dying the next day. And so his daughter is also a detective, and she wants to find out what happened to her father. And there's this new serial killer that's coming to light who calls himself the Outcast, and he ends up kidnapping her daughter. So now she's trying to track down this menace to society, and she's wondering if he's perhaps a copycat of Father Silent. So it sounds really good. I love the cover, and I do want to give this a chance, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of this author's last novel. And then coming out September 17th, we have Midwestern Gothic. I talked about this one in my last anticipated reads, but they moved the release date on me, so I had to wait, which was so sad and frustrating because I didn't know that they had moved the release date until I went to Barnes & Noble to get it, and it wasn't there, and I was so sad. But anyways, this is by Scott Thomas, who wrote Kill Creek, which is one of my favorite horror books, and so I'm very excited to read this. This is a collection of 4 novellas. I'm not normally a big fan of short story collections, but because these are novellas, not short stories, I'm hoping that it will work better for me, and he's a phenomenal writer. This one I will definitely be getting my hands on as soon as possible. Apparently there's lots of vampire stuff coming out. We also have a romance coming out called My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levin, and this is the same author that did My Roommate is a Vampire, or My Vampire Roommate, something like that. I can't quite remember what it's called. But anyways, I do own a copy of that first one, but I haven't read it yet, and so I didn't want to read the synopsis to the second one because I don't know if there's any spoilers in it or if it's like its completely own thing. I don't really know, because sometimes it's like you have one romance and then this is a romance with her sister or her best friend or whatever. So I don't know. I doubt this is a direct sequel, but you never know. I just wanted to let you know that it is coming out in case you're interested. I can't remember if I said, but this is coming out September 17th. And then coming out September 24th, we have Devils Kill Devils by Johnny Compton. And I really enjoyed this White House. It wasn't perfect, but I think it was a really good one. It did have a little bit too much going on, and some of the really cool ideas in that book I wish the author had explored a little bit more. But for the most part, I really enjoyed that one. So I'm excited to read something else by the author. And this sounds like it's going to be about a woman who has a guardian angel that she named Angelo, and he kind of looks after her and protects her throughout her life, and she keeps him secret. She hasn't told anybody about him. But then one day Angela murders somebody that she loves. And so now this kind of puts her in a tailspin because she doesn't know why or what's going on or what to do about it. And then coming out September 24th, we have one of my most anticipated books. This one is The 13th Child by Erin Craig, and I absolutely love this author's writing. I love her books, Small Favors and The House of Salt and Sorrow. They're two of my favorite books. These are YA fairy tale retellings. So this one is about a Grimm's fairy tale called Godfather Death, which kind of makes sense because she's actually the goddaughter of Death. I've never heard of that fairy tale, so I have no idea what to expect when it comes to this story. I just know that the main character is the goddaughter of Death, and Death has gifted her with the gift of healing. And so she can look at somebody and know exactly what to do to heal them and get them feeling better. But on the flip side, she can also tell when somebody is beyond help and Death has already claimed them. And it's now her job to finish them and pretty much kill them. So she doesn't like it, but she does it, for the sake of her godfather. One day she goes to the castle and meets Prince Leo, and he's one of the ones that's slated to die. And she really doesn't like that because she probably has a crush on him, and she really doesn't want to kill him, but she also is nervous about the consequences of going up against death. So this sounds really fun. I love the cover, I love the author, and I'm so excited for this one. And that's all the books I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some books to add to your TBR. I ask that if you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know. Please leave me a comment letting me know which of these books you're planning on reading or picking up for yourself. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and we can talk about horror and thriller books and become friends. And I'll catch you later. See ya!